welcome to Carlie's couch.
I was about to say, that's your answer the phone voice when you don't know who it is?
Yeah, that was weird because I never started it with that inflection. It was just a totally different inflection, but whatever.
What's up? How you feeling?
It did sound like answering the phone.
It did. Hello? How you feeling?
I feel good. I've been getting a lot of stuff done in the last couple of weeks and having a lot of good energy around me, kind of, or by myself. And it's been good.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a lot more sunny lately, so I've been out in the heat a little bit more.
I feel like the sun definitely has affected the energy in the city. Like, people are more excited, wearing brighter colors, just a little bit overall happier.
I'm
so
sweating. It's hot.
Dog, it's hot as
because I'm in the valley. Oh, you kind of are now too. I'm in the valley. It's like 90 when it's really 80. So.
Yeah, I can keep.
But I like that.
But I hate. I mean, I love the heat, but I hate when the news
you
or
said
the
keep
weather.
all that like you're not from Oklahoma, dog. Like you was in the prairie. What are you talking about?
Exactly, but I moved out here to not be in there. And
you got something on your cheek.
Is it black?
No.
Oh.
It's like candle wax.
What?
She just came from her S&M class.
I was like, yeah, because I thought you were about to say yoga.
Candle wax just dripped on her cheeks.
I was teaching a candlelit yoga class.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it really was candle?
Probably, yeah.
Wow, that's a good ID. Boy, I'm Columbo out here. That was a good ID.
Yeah. Told y'all she was a spy.
Dang, I'm proud of myself.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about forgiveness today. And I don't know if this was sparked by anything specifically, but I think it's a really good topic. We've talked before about not really forgiveness, but yeah, letting things go. And, you know, we always talk about how you do what you can do in situations on your side so that you're feeling comfortable and you feel in a good space. And so forgiveness is one of those things I think that is very important. I don't know. I guess we'll get into it.
Yeah, I don't think it was sparked by anything, but I feel like I just thought it was important, like an important conversation to have, because as I've gotten older and have more life experiences, the way that I think about forgiveness and the way that the way that I process, I guess, is very different and has grown a lot. And so I was like, maybe that'd be something.
I don't think about forgiveness that much.
Really?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, we'll get into that. But when I say forgiveness, what does that mean to you?
Forgiveness is when you are allowing yourself to be at peace with something you've perceived as a wrongdoing towards yourself.
I like that.
That was kind of all right.
That was a great.
That was kind of all right.
Lextopia, like Wikipedia, like Lextopia.
Shout out this Red Bull, sugar-free. Got my brain going.
Feel like she put some extra sugar in there.
I know.
So the actual definition, I'm not even going to follow that up because that was so good. But the technical definition is the act of ceasing to feel resentment against an offender.
Oh, so that was the kind of same thing. When I say when you're at peace about it, yeah.
I mean, but you also
like
said
the thing
yourself.
happened, yeah.
But that means like the thing happened, and then you either forgive yourself or the other person. You're just at peace with it.
So it's something you do, and you receive though. So how do you receive somebody else's peace?
Well, no, I think
when they don't feel, or when they feel at peace about something you may have done towards them.
I don't know if you can. I feel like forgiveness, like you have to kind of.
It only is about you.
Yeah.
But you can receive forgiveness. I mean.
Yeah, they can forgive you, but you can still be beating yourself up about it. Like if we're saying it's like being at peace with something. If you did something to me and I forgive you, but you still feel bad about doing that thing, you're not at peace. But I've forgiven you.
Yeah, but they are. So they did forgiveness back.
So I guess it's
I don't need to do forgiveness if they did it to me, Carlie.
Of the like the offendee.
All right, this is Inception now, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Neither do I. So I guess I'll keep moving forward. So you said you don't think about forgiveness a lot. So what role?
Or maybe I should say, when do I think about it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when do you think about it? Like, what role has it played, like in your life or your relationships?
So the first thing I actually think about when we talk about forgiveness is wrongdoings, as in social injustices and things like churches getting shot up and then people putting a microphone in their face and asking if they forgive somebody, like moments and days after something happens, or people on the stand, or like when something big has happened like that, how that seems to always be like some big deal, like you're supposed to forgive, or like that's now your moral obligation in a situation where you were a victim. So that's kind of like the first thoughts around forgiveness that I came up with. But of course, relationship wise, I only think about forgiveness maybe in terms of like romantic relationships where and maybe if something happened or somebody did wrong by you or you did wrong by somebody, and wondering if they'll ever forgive you, or not receiving someone's forgiveness, or them saying they won't forgive you, or you having to forgive something that's been done to you. I don't know, maybe it's like every other year, like something happens and that comes up. But in my like regular overall life, I can't think of many situations of like a person or things going on where like I'm thinking like about forgiveness, like as it being like a big deal.
Yeah.
Like a big transgression or something.
Well, it's interesting.
I also don't have a lot of people close enough to me to break my trust for something to have to get forgiven.
That's also...
So it probably would just be somebody that I'm in a romantic relationship with.
That's real. I feel like that's the first place it always comes up. But I also think that's why I said it's different as we get older. I feel like even in romantic relationships, the more open you are with communication and the better understanding that y'all have, like you have less of those like big flare ups where it's like something has to be forgiven. I guess unless somebody says something that's like hurtful or does something.
But you never know like what it is, because it might not have to be some huge thing, but it could be something like you're saying, like if somebody just says something that hurt your feelings or something.
But then you spend time processing. Whenever I actually thought of this topic for an episode, it was forgiving myself and forgiving stuff in my past, like people or
I didn't even mention that, did I?
Yeah.
I don't think about forgiving myself much, except I have kind of recently.
Yeah.
Or as in like this year, maybe I've thought about them more, about certain things that I recognize, and try to give myself a pass on.
Trying to give myself grace. I feel like it's a lot easier to extend grace to other people for me. And I was processing, with my therapist and talking, just having my own conversations with friends. And there's a lot of stuff that like I was either judging myself very harshly on, because I'm a reformed perfectionist. I don't like to claim that anymore, but anytime I fall short of this idealized version of myself, I, kind of can be down on myself. And so working on letting that go, letting myself be human, even though I'm still a superhero, but letting myself be human sometimes, and learning how to process that. And then also forgiving people for things in my life that I didn't know I was still holding on to. So something that like we've made it through this thing, whatever happened, they hurt me or they did me wrong, whatever happened, we made it through. And so I'm like, oh, I'm good. Like I don't feel any anger towards you, but I've never really been at peace with it. So I hadn't let it go.
I think in the journey of forgiveness or self-forgiveness, really this year, more than the, like forgiving yourself, was the identification of things that were really a me problem, if that makes sense. Like realizing like, oh, I'm holding this about myself, or this is a thing with myself, and identifying those a little bit more, and then kind of being like, all right, so now like what am I gonna do to be like, okay, this is okay, or what needs to be done, or what's the process from there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is it hard? Is forgiving hard? Or with your experience with it, has it been hard for you? With self or with others?
I don't know what hard is, though. I mean, forgiveness, I think it's hard because it's difficult, even with yourself, to distinguish if you really mean it, or if you feel like you owe that, or if you feel like you're supposed to do it. Like, it's a thing, like, okay, I'll feel better if I could forgive this, but actually forgiving it, and you still can flip, or you know what I mean? Like you have a couple drinks and now you still have that same thing come up, whereas you thought you were trying to over it, or you told them, oh no, it's okay, but you really haven't processed it for real. So I think it's kind of hard in that vein, to where, I kind of question myself, like, all right, am I just saying this to like make them feel better, or, whatever, or is it really something like I'm okay about? And I think you're only really okay about it if you're not having all that conversation.
Exactly. I was just thinking about it. People are like, oh, I'm over that person, or I forgave them and I'm done.
Yeah, but they tweeting about being over it every day, and it's like,
debatable.
It doesn't really look like you're over it.
Self-check.
Yeah.
Only preaching to myself
and
here.
And that's always how I'll catch myself. I'm trying to talk about something, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm like denying what I'm saying right now by like saying it.
Because it makes me feel better to think that I'm over it.
Yeah,
or that I'm
like you're
through
really telling yourself what you wish you were at or where you wish you were at.
that idealized version of ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's funny. Or have you ever been talking about a situation or a person or something that happened, and all of a sudden the emotion like rushes back from that moment, and I'm like, oh, like maybe there's a little bit more to process here that I haven't thought
like if
about.
you're still triggered about it.
So are forgiving and forgetting the same thing to you?
What is it people always say? Forgive but don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive but don't forget.
I think that's the quote.
Which I think really just means, or to me, what makes sense is that I think that it is beneficial to forgive others, but that doesn't mean that you're not smart about how you move forward with that person, with that situation.
Fool me one time.
And yeah, I think hopefully I think that's what it means. But sometimes I think people say that and you use it to hold a grudge against the whole thing. But I don't think you should necessarily hold the grudge against that person. Because then you're just saying I forgive you just to say I forgive you. And it doesn't really sound authentic in that way. So, yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same thing.
I don't think it's the same thing. I think they can go hand in hand, but I think it's, like you said, moving forward with, I guess, more awareness. Like you have forgiven the person, but like that happened, or it might change how you interact with them, or maybe their place in your life.
Yeah, like you don't start to be somebody's friend and like act like nothing happened. So I guess that's what the not forgetting. You don't have to act like it didn't happen, but if you're gonna forgive them, then it's not something that should be brought up over and over again.
Very true. And then I was researching some ways to work through forgiveness, whether it's self or in relationships or with past traumas, like anything. And we came up with some tips on helping you learn to forgive and to either like move forward with awareness or kind of release all of these things.
Before we do that, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
No, that's not the right way to ask it. In different situations of people doing wrong by you, or you feeling like people did wrong by you and you forgiving them, or being in a place where you should forgive them, what's the longest, or like what amount of times does that look like for you? Like how long goes by to where you feel like you're okay with it? Like in your own situations. Yeah. Or like how is it different for different things?
So mostly the stuff I've been processing, like with my therapist and with my friends, is a lot of like stuff that happened when I was younger that I thought I was over, and apparently I'm not. So I'm like forgiving them and kind of forgiving myself for those situations. I think it just depends on what it is and where I am in life. Like now it's a lot easier for me to move through things, but like in an authentic way. I think before I often like quote unquote forgave people because it was the right thing to do, but I wasn't quite healed yet or at peace.
But yeah, have you had a lot of situations like with a person, not necessarily just like thinking back to like really old things, but just with people where they did something to you and like they never apologized, or if they did, you just like how you reacted to that?
The question is, how's that?
Like, have you had even a lot of those interactions? Really?
Yeah.
You have? Because I don't think I've had that many situations where it's like I'm sorry I did this, I forgive you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of them are like relationships, like when I think of stuff like that, or even in friendships. But my track record, people always come back and apologize. Like even my high school sweetheart, that's so funny. Like my boyfriend from high school, years later, I want to say it was like when I moved out here. We broke up like in 2007, so it's like 8 years later, and he hit me and was like, yo, like, I'm sorry I was this and that to you. Like, you're a great person. Like, I'm really proud of you, all these things. But he apologized. And that's an apology I had never expected to get, never cared about. But I was like, wow, that's interesting.
And so that whole time you weren't thinking that he was a person on your list that you've forgiven until like this happened. And then maybe did you have a thought of, oh, okay, I forgive you, or was just like, okay, cool, like whatever?
I was just like, okay, cool, whatever.
Like it's
like,
nothing to forgive if you.
Yeah, it's nothing to
I guess
forgive.
that means you already did, or
I had already processed that,
or it might not have even been an issue to you. Like
yeah, at the time, like my feelings were hurt, but then like, I grew through that and I kind of let it go. But I've had like, it's interesting because I've just had funny situations like that.
Is there a difference between forgiveness and just so much time going by that it just doesn't matter anymore?
I don't think the time, for me personally, I don't think the time can go by peacefully if I haven't forgiven them and like kind of let it go.
That's true. So even if you didn't make it an intentional thing, like I'm going to forgive this person right now so I can feel at peace, like it just naturally is less important.
Yeah. And also, even like you can't force yourself to be ready to forgive somebody. Like if they really hurt you, like and they have to be kind of, for me, they have to be
like
close
it's
to
okay
me
to be hurt.
Hurt me. It's okay to be hurt. Like yet again, a romantic relationship, like I thought like I was over it and I was good and all these things, but then when them times came up and I was like, oh man, I guess there is something there, but I wasn't ready. It's like I didn't want anything to do with him like at all, but I still hadn't forgiven him fully. And the only reason I know I have now is because I'm not bothered by it. Like I don't want to do any of those things. But it's interesting, like even though I was in this weird space where I wanted to forgive him but I wasn't ready, I still like wish the best for him, like still like all of those things. There's never any bad blood, but there's just like my own healing and my own processing that I have to do.
Okay, so and I just wanted to ask you some questions because to hear about your experiences with it a little bit, but now you're starting to kind of talk about the process. So then going back into your tips, I guess those things you've said will be part of it. And the first tip that you have down here is forgiveness is a process, not an event. And I think that is important because back to what I said earlier, when you do put a mic in front of somebody's face, like, do you forgive them? Like what they there's no way, like, why would you even expect that in that moment? And it's not a thing you could just say and now that's what it is. Exactly with this, I don't think. Whereas we always say stuff like, oh, you make a decision. Like if you want to do something, make the decision and do it. I don't know if forgiveness is quite like that. I think you do need to process for it. So I like that that's the first tip, just recognizing and be easy on yourself that, it's going to hurt you for a while or it may come up, for a while as you're trying to work through it.
Yeah. And not judging yourself, letting yourself process. Like it is a process. And even, like I said, even if there is no bad blood, like you still might be hurt and that's fine. Going into that, like forgiveness isn't letting the offender off the hook or letting it continue to happen. Like forgiveness isn't like, oh, like that's what fool me one time, shame on you, fool me twice. Like that part is like not letting it continue to happen and like using boundaries and not letting them off the hook. It doesn't look like, oh, you really hurt my feelings. Like you did this to me. Okay, great. And just opening up the door for you to do it again. It can be, either maybe cutting that person off. Maybe they have a different space in your life, like doing whatever you need to do to protect yourself and your heart.
But some people, I think, do this. They forgiveness to them looks like letting that person kind of keep doing it, or it ends up opening a door back into that happening. And so I think it is important for you to be real with yourself, again, about if you're really forgiving them for yourself. Or if your forgiveness is really just a kind of cover for not wanting to let a person, leave or be out of your life. So, kind of managing your own motives, I guess, is important. So it shouldn't feel like that.
I like that, managing your motives, like really getting down to why you feel the need to do this, or why, even though they've done this to you 3 times, you keep letting them do the same thing. Because at some point, I feel like you also do have to take accountability for the things that you keep on letting into your life.
Yeah, forgiveness is very closely, related to self-love, I think, in that you are doing what's best for you and you are trying to be at peace with the situation for yourself. And so you just really have to examine, like, if it's really for you.
Forgiveness is not, well, this is kind of on the same one. So forgiveness is not the same as reconciling. It's not fixing everything. Everything is not perfect and exactly like it was. It's not, and it's different, and that's okay too. So figuring out what that looks like. But it also means that you don't have to revert to being the victim. And like, I think a lot of people, when things happen, when people do things to them or things happen in life, can take on this victim role. And so forgiveness doesn't mean like always playing the victim.
Asking for forgiveness?
No, like
forgiveness doesn't mean we have to
like
revert to
if
being
somebody like is doing
like
stuff
you can still have power and forgiving is what you
can
mean?
still have power and forgive. Like you're not just a recipient like of these things that you can't control.
And like it kind of going back again, I guess it's adding on to what you've been saying, like you're not a victim in that. You're not just saying okay, it's cool, and then everything's just still happening or the same as well. Okay I really like the next tip that you have. We don't always have to tell them that we've forgiven them. I think that when you do air quote kind things or the right thing, especially when it has to do with other people, and you feel a need to say something about it or tell them, that what you really are hoping for is some kind of reaction, and what you're really hoping for is to manipulate a situation, maybe for them to say, like, man, you're right. I'm glad you forgive me. I am sorry. Like, maybe in time we could try again. Like, you're looking for that, and you're looking for that. When really forgiving them, like we were saying earlier, is sometimes just you making that decision in your head and trying to process through that. But doing that on your own, like, you don't have to be talking about it.
And I love that. And it's, again, manage your motives. Like, why do you need to tell this?
Anytime you feel like you need to tell another person something that you're doing, or like your processes, or your, what you're going through, or whatever, like, think about what you really, what reply are you really hoping to get from them? Like, if they didn't answer, or they didn't say anything, like, how would you feel? And I think that changed the game for me a lot with the whole, like, going back and forth with a person or whatever, because you realize, like, I'm acting like I'm over, and I think I'm over it, but, like, we're still just trying to have this conversation, like, hoping something will change. And so if I didn't even text her a happy birthday, because I was like, I really just, because, I had like a little speech. I was like, I really just want to say a bunch of shit, like, that I want to hear after that. But, like, so because that, if I caught myself with that, I won't say anything. And it's been working really well to have a rule of having a pause and just totally doing something different than I would have done in a previous, like, dating situation or whatever now.
I love that. And I question my motives now. So even if we're not beefing, nothing's happening, but I, like, feel like I need to do this thing, I'm like, why?
Yeah. Like,
what would happen if you didn't do this? Why does it matter? What validation are you seeking? What affirmation or something are you looking for externally? And then trying to kind of get away from that. And then the last tip is that forgiveness doesn't mean you shouldn't have any feelings about it. Like, just because you've forgiven someone, you can still very much be hurt and still be processing that pain, or you can kind of just be over it and not, but just know that, like, forgiveness doesn't require you to not feel anything else about it.
That's good. And
then we have a couple of tips of, like, things to look out for, which Lex has already been on it with the managing your emotions. But the first one is withholding forgiveness is a refusal to let go of perceived power.
So if somebody has done wrong by you and they're kind of coming to you and, kind of trying to make things right, for you to just be like, no, you did me wrong, no more chances, it makes you just feel good in that moment, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. To feel validated in that power.
And so what's wrong with that?
I think that it's just checking your emotions. I don't think if you're doing it because you're actually hurt and whatever, like, you're just not there yet, like, that's fine. But if you're doing it in a way because you want them to keep on coming back, you want them to be sorry, or like you want them to, like, worship the ground that you walk on to try to make it up to you, like, you're manipulating them.
Ooh, actually, so that makes me think of some folks I know who are, like, married, but, years later the wife will still be like, well, I'll see them. Maybe she'll be like, go do the dishes, do this, do that. And he's, like, doing everything. And she's always like, Lex, you don't understand how much I had to deal with in, like, the past. And, like, whoo, girl, I deserve this now. And in my head, I'm like, shouldn't we be past this by now? Like, how long are you holding this over this person's head? Like, it's weird to me. But that's what that kind of sounds like.
It does. And also, like, holding that victim status. Yeah. Like, they've done all this stuff to me. And so now they have to do this to make it up. But it makes you kind of feel powerful and feel validated in having those manipulative feelings. And yeah, so that's the first one.
And to the opposite of that exact same thing, sometimes if you're steady, like, going to a person trying to get their forgiveness or trying to, open up some convo, it's like, all right, you need to let go of feeling like you're the victim in that case. And because I think some people like that kind of space to be in, honestly, where they're always the ones just, like, trying to start a conversation over and over. And it's like, let it go. Like, no, I'm not forgiving you. I'm not giving you forgiveness.
And on the flip side, like, you can also forgive too quickly.
Yeah.
And just keep letting people either run over you or forgive them because you want them to stay in your life. Like, they messed up, but, like, you also don't want to lose them. And so you're like, well, I have to forgive them. Otherwise, I'm not going to have them in my life. Like, I think, like, there's a flip side. You have to figure out what is happening within you and what you need to process and figure out what that looks like. But it's not always forgiving as soon as something happens, like, oh, you did this to me, but it's okay.
And forgiving too quickly really means you're not really forgiving, probably. So that's kind of a waste. That's just you saying stuff. What is this? We might be pressured into false forgiveness before we are ready, and that kind of ties in as well. So not feeling pressured, like you're forgiving somebody just because they're expecting it, or you have to, or what's the other side, that you're requesting somebody. So if you're requesting, we didn't really talk about requesting forgiveness like that, and I keep trying to think about it from that way as well, because
What do you mean?
like if you know there's somebody, just like how like maybe an ex has done with you, or like the story you said earlier, if you know there's somebody that you've hurt in the past and you just never, you just don't feel good about it, or it comes up, random or whatever, should you say something, or should you just let it roll, like if they seem like they're okay?
I think it depends on the person. Me, I'm Jon Snow. It's terrible. So I'll always usually apologize. Like if I feel like I did somebody wrong and it's still sitting on my soul, but I'm not like, I forgive you, or I'm sorry, please forgive me. I just
don't
apologize.
think I've ever said please forgive me from anybody.
Me neither. I've just
in the
apologized.
same way you can forgive over here without them being a part of that and them not knowing that, can't you on the other side too just be like, man, like I feel bad about this, and like you can apologize, but like you don't have to ask for.
Yeah, I feel
that's
like
not that shouldn't be a thing you need, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because then I feel like you're kind of apologizing just for that forgiveness.
Yeah, now you need that kind of validation.
Exactly. And so, I mean, if it's on your heart and you feel like you need to apologize to someone, like you can do that. I think you should.
I think a big theme in all of this really has just been that it's a very internal process. But even through all of this and like the tips that we gave and things to think about as you're processing, I don't know if we ever really talked about like what is the process of forgiveness?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask you, because we got, especially for I think self.
Because I was trying to think about like how have I processed. Well, it does take a long time.
You mentioned earlier like you just kind of got awareness like this year, maybe last year, like about things that you need to forgive yourself for, or like working through that. Like how did you how did you become aware about that, and how has that process looked for you?
But with myself is totally different than like the process of forgiving another person. But with myself, well, maybe it's not after this first thing of actually identifying them, and that's that I've just been more aware of how I talk to myself, because I'm in my head a lot. Like I'm always in my head talking. And so I've been a little bit more conscious of like the things that I say. And sometimes I've started to catch certain things like, oh man, I'm hearing this frequently. And I feel like I shouldn't have that thought frame that way. How can I reframe it? And then as I keep catching myself, I'll either kind of have to forgive myself. So if I find myself going down that lane of, dang, like I did that again type thing, and being like, no, it's okay. Like I'm still catching it right now and I'm still processing through it. I'm working through it. Or, kind of forgiving myself for that thing I'm like literally like thinking or doing. But I think it's just in that moment I just say like, Lex, it's okay. Like, and again, like you're being aware of it right now. So I don't know, you just get more and more aware, and I think it maybe kind of just goes away after a while.
Yeah.
Whatever those things are or thoughts are.
Yeah. I think the first step is awareness. So for myself, it was like I just realized I was down about certain situations or had a lot of guilt or shame around things. And I think guilt and shame are great indicators for where there still needs some healing and some kindness towards yourself. And I'm like, okay, well, why do I feel like I did something wrong, or why am I judging myself about this? Or why do I feel any type of way? And kind of like I journal through it and figure out, or I talk about it with somebody, therapist, friend, otherwise, and kind of talk through things and getting down to the root. Like, I expected myself to, be perfect in this situation, and I was a human, and I'm judging myself for it. And like, I can kind of let that go. But then with like people, the process. So, I just use one of my best friends as an example. We haven't really been spending a lot of time together, and I was kind of feeling a little type of way, cause like I haven't really talked to her or seen her. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, like my feelings are a little hurt, because we haven't spent time together. Like I know I haven't been reaching out either, but just letting you know, like, can we spend more time together? And that was that process. And she was like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I haven't been.
But that's you. Which one are you in that case? Like, are
both,
you,
I guess.
Are you,
I guess
you're kind of
upset.
asking for forgiveness? Are you telling somebody you're upset about something? Where does that fall with forgiveness? Just because I'm getting a little confused now that I think about it. Like,
see, now I'm confused. Too much coffee. in the process, I guess that would be like if she had been withdrawn and not, that would be me forgiving her, but telling her what I need. That's why I was like, I feel like the older we get, the less it's about like, oh, they did this to me, I have to forgive them. Then it is actually just processing a situation where I might have hurt feelings.
Okay. So you're like pre the forgiveness part, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, and like how you process your own feelings to where it's not a thing that a year later you're like harboring something and now it's some bigger thing. Okay.
So it's like I noticed that I was feeling this type of way, and instead of like holding on to it or playing like a victim or doing any of these things, I just kind of have a conversation with her. And I've been doing that a lot more, both in romantic relationships and in my regular friendships. And it's helped me a lot. Like there haven't been situations for a very long time when it's like, oh, you did this to me, I
see what you mean,
need to forgive you for this.
Yeah,
or
so
something.
that's kind of getting ahead of it. Trying to think of maybe that is part of what like the maturing is, except for if we're talking things like somebody walks into the bar and shoots you type thing, like that makes sense for relationships with like your friends or romantic relationships. But then there's sometimes people just did a thing to you, and there may be no remorse, or it doesn't matter what you express or what you process, like they did something to you. And how can you be, I think one way for me that helps me process being okay with that and forgiving that is looking at myself in the mirror and seeing like how I've probably done the same type of thing, unless it's the shooting the person in the bar. But like, well, I ain't even mean to do that on this camera. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't mean to second think that. But yeah, physically hurt people before. But so thinking about the fact that, all right, have I done that? Or like, kind of bringing them back to like taking them off a pedestal. Like, do I feel some kind of way because I had them on some kind of pedestal or whatever?
Yeah. Oh, and I think that could be a whole episode in itself. Yeah,
it is. So like seeing myself and being like, bro, like you've done that before. You've hurt people before. You've lied, or whatever it is that's hurting you. And so understanding that it's okay. Like it's part of people's like journeys, or not that it's okay, but that you can forgive it, because if you can forgive yourself about it, then you can forgive that. And so maybe in a lot of ways I've forgiven myself for a lot of crazy stuff I've done, because I used to be a totally different person. And so now seeing that in somebody else isn't as triggering once I kind of reprocess it that way through like, okay, I've been there too. But that also means being different around that person usually, or, still not giving them the same space in your life or whatever. But I think that was very helpful for me.
I like that, and bringing it back down to like looking at yourself. It always comes back down to self-awareness. But I think for me also, like, especially with stuff like from my past, so processing trauma, like stuff with my family and things like that. And it's just like, they, not always, but in these situations for me, it's like, like my mom, for example, like she was doing the best that she could at the time with what she had.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just it. And it wasn't malicious, like her intent, kind of looking at the intent, like she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just trying to make it, fam. And I got hurt in the process. And like, having that conversation with her, like letting her know that, I've really been thinking about this and it really hurts my feelings that X, Y, and Z. But I know that you were doing everything you could.
That's true too. Looking at a full context of like what all is being dealt with, and again, not necessarily excusing it, because I think that's a big thing too, where we talk about using forgiveness as manipulation, where sometimes you're using it for the wrong reasons, and you're trying to justify like that it was okay that they did that. And so I think that's kind of dicey too. But I don't know, is that something you feel like you need to tell them in a case like that?
Well, I know my mom holds a lot of guilt.
Okay, so you already know from her side.
Yeah, from her side. So that's a conversation.
It wasn't just random, like she was making you toast and you were like, Mom, I really
she
felt some kind of way.
Because she feels really bad, but I'm telling her like, that did hurt my feelings, but I've grown a lot and I'm okay. And I really want her to forgive herself, because if you don't forgive yourself, like that's toxic for you.
Okay.
But yeah, so not in a way for that, but that's one way that I've processed older trauma, or things that people like have done to me, or when they didn't show up for me and my feelings got hurt, and just like actually having that conversation with them, but also keeping in mind, like being self-aware of myself and owning my part in things.
Do you feel like your feelings are hurt frequently or easily? I mean, it's all subjective, but like easily, kind of. Mm-hmm.
I'm sensitive, but not as much anymore.
Okay. Because as you're talking too, that's what I'm thinking. Like, what do I have to forgive? And like a lot of things didn't harm me in the first place for me to feel like I'm at the place of, you know, caring about forgiveness and stuff. So that's why like my ideas of it, and when I think about examples, are mostly gonna be like a big like distrust against me or like something against me, you know. But for the most part, just like how you had your prequel of how you processed through it, like and at the beginning of it, it kind of bounced off me a lot of times, or it's not a real thing to me if I don't know, like how people act, or if they say something. Like I'm even cool with that. Like somebody cuss me out, and then I'll be like, oh, okay. Like I'm very quickly know like what's really going on here. Like let me give you some space, and it's straight. Like I don't care about that.
Yeah, and I think like I had to grow into that because I used to be way more sensitive, but now I'm a lot more self-aware.
But I think everybody has their things. Like it's just a different type of thing probably too for each person that would affect you in that way.
Yeah, or like that one thing that doesn't affect anybody else but is really serious to you. Like so just thinking through those things.
And when it comes to relationships, that's the important part of understanding that too.
Bruh. So important. Also so you're not projecting on other people.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I do want to touch on before we wrap it up is like make sure you're working through your trauma and forgiving yourself and past people so you're not projecting on other people in your life.
Yeah, anytime you feel upset, it's always like, all right, what's going on with me? Anytime you feel anything, honestly, it's so weird. Like, that's always what I'd be thinking. Like, if you cussed me out and then, I don't know, like, depending on whatever happened, like, I'll just think about, all right, how did I get in this situation? Like, I really just think about me because I don't know.
How did we get here? Like the movie
Freezes? Yeah, you're probably wondering how I got here. But that's what literally what I do all the time. Whether I do something, somebody does something to me, when I'm out or whatever, I just assess it that way because that's all that you can like really focus on. I also don't think that you should let people walk all over you. And this is a forgiveness episode.
Hell no.
And I think that our community, I think, is too forgiving. I think that a lot of religious, spiritual people can be too forgiving sometimes. And so I also want to point out in this episode that, you know, you still have to be smart and you still take care of yourself first. But, and I don't think every act against you should be forgiven or needs to be forgiven in a telling them way. I think you have to get to be okay with it.
Yep.
But I don't think you have to, like, if that makes sense. Like if somebody said, do you forgive me? Like, I don't think you always have to be like, yes. Yeah, even though maybe like you do feel okay, but like, I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I might be like contradicting myself, but
no. I agree. You don't owe them that like but I guess that sounds bad. I feel like you don't owe them that satisfaction.
Is that the withholding it?
Exactly. I'm like, dang, is that a thing?
Or maybe like, yeah, it's cool, and that's it. I don't know.
So the question is, are you honoring yourself in this situation? Are you processing what you need? But just make sure you're honoring yourself, like whatever that is. Like that's been my kind of go-to.
And honor how you really feel, not how you
want to feel,
think you should feel, or how people are expecting you to feel.
Exactly. Like it's you.
Like it's okay if you don't forgive them. No, I don't forgive you. Like give me time, or I don't forgive you now. Like let's revisit. I don't know.
Yeah, but I need time, and take that time to honor yourself. Also, anytime like emotions come up or things where you feel discomfort, I challenge you also to sit in it and figure out what's going on. Yeah, and be okay with that.
Good stuff.
Dun, dun, dun. So this week we have a shout out. It's
a whole lot of words.
Mind your business. So it's Thrive
the whole
Health
schedule
Lab.
of the business on there.
I'm actually going to say it, but
you should. Go ahead.
Thrive Health Lab. So they are in View Park, Baldwin Hills. I teach there, but we started offering community classes because the other yoga teachers and I and some of the fitness instructors, we didn't start working in holistic health and wellness to make it inaccessible. We actually started for the opposite reason, to bring it to our community from people who look like us, who understand us, who care about us, and who play great music. Because we do. And so we have a community schedule every first and third Sunday at 6 p.m. I teach self-care Sundays, yoga. We have community yoga every second Saturday at 10:45. Soul Flow yoga every Monday at 6. And then every fourth Saturday, we have a free workout class, donation-based. The schedule is at thrivehealthlab.com and on Instagram. So you can check out the full schedule. But if you know people in LA, or if you're coming to visit, every time I have friends come visit, I make them come to class. Make as in I offer, and they.
So when you say community, that just means it's open to anybody?
Open to anybody. You don't have to be a member. It's donation-based.
Oh, because at the gym, people have membership.
At the gym, people have memberships, or you pay drop-in fees.
Okay.
Which in LA are expensive all the way around the world.
Oh, I see. Like for the day, like a pass.
It's expensive.
Okay.
And so these are just donation-based, so there are no excuses to not be taking care of yourself.
So clarifying, donation-based. You can just give them what you want.
If you got it, you got
okay.
it. If you
or
don't,
if you just want to come in and check it out. Okay, that's cool. And they can see the schedule online.
Yep, you can see the schedule online and so it's thrivehealthlab.com and at Thrive Health Lab.
Okay, cool. And we have a question of the week, and I'm going to let Carlie ask it because I haven't really looked at it yet.
So, Lex, what would less look like?
Damn, I don't know what could be any less right now. Less look like. I'll take it towards professionally. Less right now for me could look like a less time in front of my laptop in like weird hours and around friends and stuff. Is that what the question is? I don't know if I answered it right. Okay.
It's what the question is.
It's weird to say what would less look like instead of what would more look like.
Exactly.
But it could be the same thing. What would less look like to be more for your life?
Exactly.
Ooh. All right. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. So the laptop?
Yeah. Less. Yeah. I really want to say the more part. I don't know how to say the less part.
Okay, we'll say the more part.
More time, more intentional focus time away from work. So what's the less of that?
Less work?
But not less work. I don't need less work. I just needed to be more organized. I'll think about that. I think it made sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
What would less look like to you?
I would say, yeah, it's a hard question. Less, I guess, no, but I like that. I was going to say like less chaos because I feel like I have so much stuff going on all the time that sometimes it can get chaotic, but that's kind of always how I live my life. More organization, less chaos.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were answering this right. I don't know why would you say
why would you want maybe less? People could say less stress or less overwork or less self-doubt, less. It could be any ethereal thing. If mine would be like less self-doubt.
Like, if you were living in less, like, what does that look like? What does that feel like?
Or getting rid of stuff like recondoing.
Eating at the house more or like stuff like that.
Or like, less frivolous expenditures. More discipline. But I think there's always that side.
Yeah, and it depends on who you are. Because like for me, I live a kind of minimalist life. I think. Do you think I live minimalist kind of? I think I do. Like I can move out in a couple suitcases and I'm like, all right. So for me, I don't feel like I don't have like anything that I'm like stacked up except the bills that I be acting like I don't see. And I don't know what else.
Mine. Less chaos, more intentionality. Like I'm very intentional with the things that I'm doing, but I feel like if I was more focused in a couple areas, my life would be a little bit less chaotic.
Okay.
Or like less self-doubt, more opportunity. So what does that look like for you? What would less look like? And then also don't forget to tune into our live episode.
Oh yeah, dang! I should have said that at the beginning.
We can put it in the notes.
I forgot about it. That'll coming up in a few days.
Definitely on Wednesday. This Wednesday, July
episode
17th.
Yes, 17th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern.
Goal setting.
Or maybe the night before. I don't know how long it can just sit there. But we create a link. We'll send it to you. And if you go into the link, you can watch live and participate live with YouTube.
Please participate.
Yeah, so it's Wednesday night. You'll see us tweeting about it and Instagramming and probably another email and whatever. So hopefully you're doing your goal setting challenge because we're talking about goal setting on Wednesday. So you'll definitely hear from us then. And then for those of you who just listen to the podcast, you'll hear the recording from Wednesday next Monday when the actual episode comes out.
So Wednesday, we're going to send out a link, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, goal setting.
Yep. We hope you enjoyed the episode on forgiveness today. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting things to think about.
It is. It made me think and kind of put things in perspective, which I'm always down to grow and do.
I don't think right now I owe too much like forgiveness right now. So I guess that's an okay thing. No, actually, I do. I'm lying. I'll take that back.
As I say, I feel like I'm in the healthiest spot I've ever been with myself and people in my life. Yes.
With forgiveness? Like this specific? Or are you just saying in general?
I think in general.
That's
but
good.
Including forgiveness. Not limited to.
That's a goal. That's good, Carlie.
Yeah, man. We out here. Happy whatever day this is.
Wednesday.
Bye, y'all.